Okay, we are live. Welcome, everybody. We're not going to say anything about Todd at this meeting. We'll wait till 6 o'clock. Pretend Todd's not here. All right, we're going to call the meeting to order. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda, please?
Motion to adopt.
Second.
And Vaughn second. Any comments on the agenda? All in favor?
Aye.
We're good to go. Review of prior meeting minutes. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
So we got a second from Vanessa and the motion made by Jackson. Were there any comments? The only comment I had on the minutes is we don't do the pledge at this meeting.
Right.
So it somehow it got in there, so strike the pledge. The rest of the minutes I thought was perfectly fine. Did anybody else have anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes. November 2019 financials. I will go through these. I just want to make a couple of big picture comments, just for the sake of people who might watch this from home. We have $88,000 in cash. We have what's called a negative receivable, which is really a payable on here for $15,000 that's owed to Lex, and we had owed them money that just they didn't bill us for, so we held it for a while. So we're going to end with, this is as of November, but around December, we'll be in the neighborhood of $75,000 of CCS cash. So CCS finishes the year with a good cash position. We all know pretty much right now they've got Posh Pooch and then other things that.
4th of July.
And the 4th of July, sorry, good point. And then other things we can think about.
So can I just ask quickly, given that number, what's your estimate as to when CCS money would eventually run out? How many years do we have?
Well, if you look at this year, CCS had a loss of $16,000.
Right.
So, if the 20 keeps coming in and offsetting it, I mean, this could go for quite a while.
Yeah.
So I don't see, we got someone in the audience now. I don't see CCS cash being an issue for quite a while. The real issue with CCS is, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, we're going to talk about how we're going to use it much more augustly to actually get grants for other stuff. I think it's kind of.
So it's essentially self-sustaining at this point. We're not, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but we're not overspending it to deplete it down or to try and close out the account by spending all the money in the account. Is it, Steve?
You have 20 a year that's a CJC contribution going into
Right.
it. And that's a number that Crow Board drives and then Canoa approves and CJC approves. So I think we're spending about 30 this year on 4th of July. So if we just do the math, the extra 10, you had a bank of money already in there, but that will run out eventually if you chose year after year to go that extra 10 without funding it from CJC.
There is no imminent danger of CCS running out of money in 18 months.
Correct.
So it's there, and the right answer is it's a 501c3, which has real value, and expanding this is the model we should do. Think
It's a
about.
501c4.
C4.
Yeah.
All right, my error.
That's okay, I just want to make sure that I didn't.
So that's the financial story. The next thing with the financials is the motion to approve the grant. I think every one of you has been through this before, where we're going to do the same thing at CROA and here, where you have to close out the year. And the motion is to approve the association resolution for CCS for the election to have excess income applied to the following year's assessments. Can I get a motion, please?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
Second from David. Any comments?
Just real quick, but so if anyone's watching, there's no assessments being charged to homeowners for CCS. It's just standard language that we have to do every year.
Right. And this is a typical thing that happens at year end, each year, to close out a year and roll it into the next year.
Right.
And we'll have the same resolutions at the CROA meeting later today.
It may be on next month when we have the December
I
financial.
thought there was one.
It may
even
be on this month.
I thought there was one there. Even.
And that's something we have to
Yes.
do under the 501c4 rules, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Any other conversation? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, so the last thing we have is community Grants Research Committee discussion. Before we go to that, I'll just reiterate one more time, in the minutes from last month and in the discussion last month, we talked the audited financials. The audited financials for 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18 are on the website. I did confirm that with Susan. Anybody who wants to go to the CCS on the celebration can see them. They were all fine. We chose not to have an audit for 2019 intentionally, because we just said it was spending money we didn't think wisely, and we said we would do one at the end of 2020 for a 2-year period. So it may be a little more expensive doing 2 years, but it'll be cheaper than doing one every year, and we cover all the audit periods, and this is not a complicated entity by any means. So that's the path we went down, and I'm really saying this for the camera and everything so that people can remember that. And then the other thing that we discussed, and we did pass a resolution on at the last meeting, was we wanted to establish a community grant research committee. And really, I think that's what we start getting into here, is committee goals and committee volunteers, and how do we roll this forward? Because it's election season, all of a sudden one day it's March, and, you know.
And then we're here again next year.
You could have 4 new board members, or you could have the same board, anything could happen, but it would be wise to start moving this forward, because one of the things we're gonna talk about, for example, at the CROA board meeting is charging stations and stuff like that. I mean, there are lots of places where we as a community could get money for technological projects or other projects and stuff like that, where there would be value in this entity.
And I think one of the things we discussed at the last CCS meeting was we were gonna wait to send out the call for volunteers until the group got to meet and decide what those goals and objectives were gonna be. And then develop the resolution, and then we would utilize that to ask for assistance for people that want to be part of it.
Right, we needed the goals first.
But the context of the goals is that CCS funding, if I'm not mistaken, is for the community as a whole. Am I correct?
Not
It-
just-
It's not CROA, am I correct?
Correct. It
The,
has,
the bigger community, like, if you
No, I mean,
can't.
the big-
restrict-
bigger community.
including Osceola County, it has to be opened to, basically to anyone who wants to come in. So for instance, we can't do something, I know, and I'm gonna repeat this again, you can't do it at the dog park with lights at the dog park, because
Key
the
access-
only people
key
that can access it is owners for
I mean, we
CROA.
could use a CROA facility. We may choose, I mean, with JR, I know there's, I was there for the first movie or the only movie held there.
At the complex.
I'm sorry, AAFC, yeah. So, I mean, CCFC.
CCS.
Yeah.
The American.
The American All-American.
Fulfillment Conference, yeah.
But there may be some event that we would have there that we might seek a grant for. CCS gets involved.
But if we sought.
But so it could, I mean, we could do that.
But let's explore this just a little broader, because if we sought a grant for something technological, it's not just benefiting CROA. For example, charging stations. You know, charging station can be used by anybody who has an
Anybody.
electric car, so that's not constricted to it. Playgrounds, we do not have restrictions on any playgrounds other than Lakeside. I mean,
Well-
We do.
fencing is.
We do, but they're not gated.
Well,
They're
they're,
they're just not
really
gated.
only not- we just don't wanna advertise that they're.
but they're not gated. I
But
mean,
here's,
no.
I'm gonna
That's
push
a
back with you
caution.
on that specifically because we already get complaints because
Right.
residents are coming, because we have timeshare people that are using our public parks that aren't fenced.
You
So
got
I don't
Spring
want,
Park,
I don't wanna
they're
go down
using
that path.
one,
I think the
which
best
is
way to look
private.
at it is what, if you were gonna use these dollars, what are you willing to say, welcome into our community, come
Yes,
use it?
yes.
And the playgrounds are not one of those amenities that you're doing
I
that for
agree
right
with
now.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is why, honestly, my perception, and when I was on CCS board before, the reason why we did the fireworks was of something that the community really liked, but anybody was open to it. So that was the thought process as to why fireworks. That going forward is something we really need to discuss, because are we or aren't we gonna do it? And I do think that that is a discussion we need to start having, so that we're not running into the same thing over and over again about, oh, wait, we need to get fireworks going, or, oh, no, we're not having it, or we are having it. So I think this is a time to have that conversation.
Yeah, I think to the idea of technology, you might, for example, when we talk about Halloween, which is not an event that we sponsor, it just happens, but we might have transportation or special shuttles in, and we might want to use that as a way to promote, something through CCS and control the traffic pattern and reduce the amount of chaos. So I think there are a lot of ways we can use CCS once that committee is up and working.
And one thing we've talked about with technology, we own a sign down in the downtown area, right, that's just static. There has been talk about electrifying that or making that technological, so that, again, could be a CCS expenditure. Could be.
Yep.
Because it's serving the larger community, serves guests who say, maybe want to do a
Want
touch screen,
information,
says,
they want
where is
information.
Vanessa's house? And
Oh, a tour of the
That would
stars.
be
a tour of the board homes.
Thank you very much.
But do we, so this is a question, do we solve for the goals first, or do we really solve for what are the types of items which we could realistically get and how do and do they fit within the parameters of CCS?
Well, currently, we are using CCS funds for posh pooch, basically.
Well, if you
And
think,
fireworks.
if you look at it this way, though, all you're doing is moving money from CJC, which is 75% Corolla, 25% Canoa, into a different fund, and you're using that. If you want to talk about grants, it probably makes sense to identify what types of grants are available to go after. Are you looking at FERDAP grants for parks? Are you looking at, just depending on what, and then identify the grant source first.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the only thing we're using CCS for that's legitimately within the grant scope is posh pooch. Because the other is a pass-through of money at the end of the day. If we could get a grant to help with the 4th of July, wonderful.
Where's your
but I
jar
get
when
that.
you need it?
And we're getting some experience with semi-dollars for,
Oh, we left it at home, no fines today.
I'm gonna get it after
It's
this.
a tremendous, CCS is a tremendous opportunity, because we had the discussion whether to close it down. It's a tremendous opportunity for us to think a little differently, and how do we look at, if you will, external grant dollars.
there may be some natural land type grants to where you could do some educational program, like nature educational programs, and we
Arts
have all this natural area with boardwalks moving through them, maybe something along those, I mean, I think when you know what grants are out there, you can gear it towards what
It's
works best
both,
for your
it's
community.
both.
But if you're talking, you're not gonna go out and get a grant for any of your events unless it's Experience Kissimmee, that's gonna be for promotion of the event. But if you want to look at the grants that are specific to amenities and those types of things, then I really think it'd probably be beneficial to say, here's what grants are out there, which ones do we wanna start going after?
It's both, it's both. It's also having some idea of what we want and then go try to find it. I don't limit grants to just the local. I mean, I would be looking at the state and national grants,
Sure, and a lot of those are parks related and natural lands related.
but also arts related,
Arts related, absolutely.
humanities. I mean,
Right. Right,
I've probably only written 200 to 250.
right, so you know
Only
something.
got 180
I think we have a
successful.
volunteer.
Right.
Only 180 successful though.
Well, Mary Ann's our point on this, right?
Mary Ann's
Yes,
the
and
point.
she has to work, so she's driving back from Orlando. I
But,
think,
so David,
until she
as you were
leaves us.
writing those grants, were they grants where you just recognized them and someone said, this is a wonderful opportunity for us to go after
You
this? Or did
you scour grant sources and
Exactly.
say,
Right,
and you know what your mission is, like if we wanted to go after youth-type grants
Mm-hmm.
for some type of thing, look at who might be a funder.
right.
I mean, is US Department of Interior, might that be something?
Sure.
I mean, with the work that I was doing, which was all, which my funding was through a university, there was it's still there, a publication called The Grant Advisor. I mean, it exists. And they gave advice and then technological advice. But they said, here's the available grants. I also believe in unsolicited proposals. So we come up with an idea, we think it's gonna cost 20 grand, 50 grand, whatever. We put it into X company, X foundation. You look at foundations and say, here are the types of things that they're funding. So it actually goes both ways. I mean, there are grants that I have gotten, it's like, oh, now we have to do it. It's like, but it was a way of funding.
So tell us
Funding
how you
was-
attack this then, David.
Say that again.
You've got the expertise, and how do we attack this? What should we be doing?
Well, we need to, I think I'd go back to goals. What is it, the sort of thing we might want to wrap our hands around? Now, I want to do a sidebar and come back, just, you know that I am on the Foundations Grant Committee. It's a small group. I think the last meeting had 3 of us there, counting staff.
That many?
That's, yeah, it was, filled the room.
So you are the grants committee then for?
No, there's, no.
Okay.
But there, so it's just starting. And one of my themes to them in starting with that is look at collaboration. They might find, my message was, they may find something that they go for, great. They may find something that would be better for CROA/CCS to go for, great.
Should we have a joint?
So there may be joint grants. So the other thing that just started is I'm now on the board for the community chorus. That's just happened in the last couple of weeks. And guess who their point person is to try to find funding? So again, the same thing is, as we find things, let's look at potential partnerships. But I would go back to the issue of goals. What do we want to try to target? Do we want to try to find something for youth and mentoring, for adults, you know, age, whatever? I mean, what is it that we might want to try? I mean, we can sit and do nothing. Or is there some initiative that goes within our?
It goes back to kind of the level of service conversation too,
It's a
doesn't it?
level of
Because-
service. What is it that we might want, what did we have on our dream list that we haven't put in our budget?
Celia, you got a comment?
That if we got funding, then we could do it.
This is Celia McFadden.
There's a microphone here if you'd like it.
Celebration Avenue, there's one right here.
What about, because it has to be for the whole community outside of celebration?
It just has to be open.
Open to it.
Open.
What about something for maybe the youth, teenagers, maybe mental health counseling?
Sure.
Something to these young people that are having issues to reach out to, that we provide here at one of the rooms, open it up. I think there's a thing that's Embrace now, it's called Embrace, where they have, if you're a recovering addict or if you're going through depression, can we do something like that for the community, for the young adults of the community that are suffering with mental health issues?
Or, I love the idea, and a spin-off on that, Celia, might be engaging in some training of some youth so that they can better assist other youth.
Right, in trouble. Yeah.
Okay,
like that.
Not worded well, but,
When
yeah.
I think about goals, I also think about almost some absolutes. Like, I would hate for us to start down a path that is going to ask more of the board. Because I think the board is busy as the devil. We can get pushback, and I'd like even less to have something that's going to take management company time, because I'm struggling with, you know, we all see the emails, we push and pull little things, we push and pull big things, and there's only so many Steves, Susans, Lauras, Todds of the world. So, you know, I'm not poo-pooing your idea. What I'm really almost thinking out loud as I listen to some of this conversation is I'd like something, if we're gonna do it, that it fits already within our existing framework, or it comes with resource commitment to allow us to add to our existing framework. So if we went with the mental health type thing, or for kids or something like that, or mental health, may not, it could be, or anybody, then I would want it to be not something where it's going to take up a full-time management
Well,
person unless we
it
had
might
funding
be-
to hire
It
somebody.
has to be funding.
Well, if you, so you have a thought, you have an idea, wonderful idea too, by the way. I think it would be great to do that. So now you gotta go out and say, are there grants available that do that? And then you find a grant, and then you gotta read the specifics of the grant. So
That's right.
one grant may say, here's money so you can go out and hire your own mental health doctor, and then you can put them in the room, and
Right.
someone's gotta manage that program. So those are, and that's why I say, and maybe I said it wrong, but knowing what grants are, because then, once you know what they are, you have to write your grant to their
Absolutely.
specifications, and there's an art to that.
Absolutely.
That you have
We
to
happen
follow
to know,
them.
we happen to know somebody that we can.
Follow the rules.
Right, exactly.
Well, let me also ask, does CCMC corporate have a grant specialist?
We don't have a position that's a grant specialist, and the reason why is because HOAs typically don't go
It's-
after
it's
grants.
hard.
Now,
It's-
I've worked in the
it's
county,
hard.
we had a grant specialist, because you go after state and federal grants and.
Speaking of an opportunity, this just came up as a couple of emails when we found out that the tennis courts were not available, without having to keep it at the school. Is perhaps a redoing the tennis courts, USTA does grants.
They do have a grant.
They have a grant program at USTA, and we can go ahead and have those tennis courts, so they look nice, have it re-fenced so that it can be used both ways. They would be able to establish a tennis program at the K-8. That might actually fill within the scope of the CCS, but I don't know.
And so that's a great example. USTA has a grant. I had a really close partnership with them in Seminole County, so I asked them and we explored that opportunity. It's $25,000 for that. The resurfacing of those courts is gonna be about $75,000. But you have to use it for tennis, and there's gonna be some restrictions. You're gonna have to promote their, 10 and under tennis program, and they're gonna have to do blended lines. So you can't do pickleball courts if you do that. It's strictly
Well,
tennis.
I think we've
Right.
established pickleball
Yeah,
is not
yeah,
gonna go there.
right.
I'm just trying to think, since we know the school will not is not taking over that, how can we kind of,
Yeah.
how can we
But
make that a
you
joint?
get, so CROA gets the grant, and this is just getting in the weeds for that one situation, but
That's
CROA
it.
gets the grant, CROA applies the grant, and then however we get the rest of the funding to finish off those courts, you just took on ongoing maintenance and operations of this facility. So the same obstacles that are
It's still there.
applying with
Okay.
what we're doing would
Yeah.
still be there for
Okay,
that.
and okay,
But
got it.
it's a great example,
I
that
was just
USDA
try-
does have grants for
I was
tennis
just trying to
courts.
think of something, because that was a complaint, was now we have this eyesore, what are we gonna do with it
Right.
now? So, okay.
And I'm sure Orlando City Soccer probably has some grants out there for youth soccer programs, probably some scholarship opportunities for those that can't afford to play soccer, those types of things. There's a lot of grants for underserved portions of communities that can help offset expenses. So it's just, what's the need?
But I want to go back to Brian's point. I mean, I don't know about anybody else. I'm feeling like my plate's pretty full right now. And I know Mary Ann has taken this on, and her plate's super full, and
And they're
Dan's
getting
is full,
fuller.
everybody's is.
Yeah.
You know, how do we move something like this forward?
So-
It seems like a pretty big task. I mean,
It's a great concept.
Yeah, yeah. I just, and I don't have an answer to that. It just
Well,
seems like it's an awful lot to do.
I was happy to hear David's comment earlier, because I didn't realize the foundation thing was there, and I'm like, I was thinking, we almost need to do a community grants committee, but not just from a CROA. If it was
Yeah.
CROA Foundation, and it could be CROA Foundation and
CCDD.
CCD, I don't care.
Yeah.
You know, if you ended up getting 7 or 8 people, because if it's, my experience with, my conversation with grant people is it can become a full-time job forever in your life, because very seldom, based on what I hear, is do you just write one and get all that money? You usually have to write one, and then you get rejected, you go a second time, a third time, and then you start, if you're getting repetitive money versus a one-time thing and
And you have
stuff
to
like that.
report on how the program's going.
Then you have
Yeah.
a reporting, so
And
it
you can
becomes.
have your quarterly reports or whatever.
It becomes a
It's a lot of work.
very, it becomes very big, which is why I made my comment about one more thing on management is just not on my court.
No.
I don't think it should be on our court unless we're gonna get funding to
Excellent.
create a person. And
Right.
so,
Is it out of the question to look into hiring somebody to do that for a fee to search grants? David, you would know, I don't know anything about grants, so
They
Is-
do, I know that they do have them.
would it be something
We do
that
have them.
could take a
I've
lot of
actually
the pressure
I've
off
hired them in the
the
past.
different people?
It's just a
Or gotten
matter
someone to
of,
hire 'em.
is it an expense worth, is it really,
I don't
right
know.
now, is it really worth spending more money to get money? When we have money in its building, we can just keep it
Well,
sitting
the
there.
foundation has hired somebody, so
They have?
yeah,
They've gone
yes.
outside.
Yeah, and so I think the best avenue forward is working with her, and looking at,
Do you think
again,
they'd be open-
could-
do you
could
think
we-
they'd be open to that collaboration?
Yeah,
Would the-
yes, yes,
Isn't their wheelhouse
absolutely.
a little bit better though? Isn't that the purpose of the foundation is to?
yeah, but if we could piggyback with it. So in other words, let me just throw out something a little tailing. Would we be willing to empower David, since he's already got the relationship with the foundation and on their committee, to talk to the foundation more if we went down a joint exercise? Because if you told me it was gonna cost us $8,000, and I'm just making a number up here, I'm not sure I would care. If 80,000, we all care a lot. But you know, if we were gonna put, and I don't know what this person calls, so let's say they've got somebody who's been hired and they get a percentage of each grant or something, and a fee of 20,000, you know, if we said, okay, this person's gonna work now on us on a team type basis and think about our 501c3 and what fits and fits, and a coordinated committee, is it worth exploring just to move this off dead center. 'Cause my biggest fear is we have this conversation and then it dies from inertia and we have it again in a year. If we want to move it off dead center, how do we move it off dead center? That's what I'm really trying to think about.
Yeah, I
And
like
at
the
least
idea, I like the
David
idea of the
has got an
collaboration.
avenue to at least start a conversation to see if there is interest
Well-
in any way.
And I'm happy to do that, and I believe that the foundation is interested in collaboration when it also serves their needs.
Right.
Because sometimes if the foundation goes alone on a grant, it's not as powerful as if they have that partnership with entity A, like CROA, entity B, CDD, the hospital. And so I think they're already amenable to that sort of collaboration.
So that strengthens the foundation's
Application
grant
for certain
purpose.
things.
Right. And ultimately, the foundation, they are actively going out seeking opportunities to help the underserved community. So we look at the food program that they do, we look at the wings program. Those are all things that help that portion of underserved needs in the community. So you look at the CROA board's purpose, and I know CCS you're serving two different hats in the same time, but CROA is preserve, protect, maintain, and enhance the amenities of communities so that the values of the homes are up. So what's the balance there?
Well-
Could the foundation take the lead and then you're there as a
Well, that's why I
backup
was saying
support?
if they had a committee that jointly worked for both, because I have heard feedback that the foundation wants to be very careful to not have any more new programs.
I've heard-
Because,
I was-
you know, they've already got 4 or 5, 6 of them out there, so the last thing
So
they
they're busy
need,
too.
they don't need
Yeah.
a 7th, 8th, or a 9th, so there may be things where using the muscle of celebration helps them,
Right.
and you can tailor something that serves two goals. I'm trying to just,
So, yeah, the question I would pose is what types of efforts that they are going after, whether it's renewal or new, would be beneficial for a joint partnership? Where might it strengthen their application? And I think they do want to be careful about going off into something new. I mean, if you were to propose that to them, they may say, that's
It's one more thing.
that's
to
one
add.
more thing, we don't do it right now. Great idea. I mean, it is a great idea,
But it is a good idea what he's saying about working with them,
absolutely,
because they reach out into the community.
They do.
in different
Not
ways.
just celebration.
They, yeah.
Especially the wings program that the kids
So-
go through
Yeah.
now.
So-
It's a great,
Yes. So a different way, if we take your idea, if we start with your kernel and have a discussion with them, and they may say, and I'm happy to do that, our next meeting is Tuesday, I think, is to say, well, you know, why don't we talk with Florida Hospital? Because this may not just be a celebration thing, maybe we can, again, just start that, and I'm happy, you know.
but I was wanting you to go a step further and actually talk with the powers that be over there.
Oh, sure.
And you, I mean, about,
Yeah.
could we build a collaborative type model, maybe some expense sharing? Because if they've hired somebody, there's some expense there. And if we did an expense sharing type thing, that might work well for us to get something launched. Because, I think maybe if we had a motion that the board says we're authorizing David and Mary Ann, whenever she's available, to work with the foundation to see if we can go down a collaborative path so that we can sit around here in a month or 2 months and say, okay, this makes sense or it doesn't make sense. Because if it doesn't make sense, we need to be saying, okay, well, what does this mean for CCS? And if it does make sense, okay, then how do we launch it more and how do we play our part?
So playing your words, just, which I like, what type of collaborative model might work for them? I mean, if we want to push that, rather than just saying.
We're actually saying that from our perspective, we think collaboration would be good.
We would like a more collaborative
We would be
model.
willing to put some skin in the game, and
That's
we
okay.
haven't talked or decided what skin means at all, but if we could do something jointly to have more value in it, you know, if it's CCD or somebody else got added, I could care less. If it adds more oomph to the product.
And it adds, I don't know if it's oomph, but something for our larger community that we all share.
And they would be, I think they'd be very happy to have that support and the backup. And this fits perfectly into your guiding principles for your programming models and for your master plan that you just talked about yesterday. It doesn't necessarily matter who's doing it. What matters is it a
being
need for
done.
the community? Is it being addressed?
And actually, I like that, Steve, but substantive, not just a need, but an opportunity for
Right.
further enhancing the value of our community, which translates to the value of our homes.
Right,
Well,
absolutely.
we all know that no one understands the alphabet soup, so as long as
Right.
celebration benefits, everybody gets credit.
Yeah, I'd make that motion.
I'll
What was the
second
motion?
There's the motion.
Can you clarify your motion?
Collaborate,
That we would,
collaborate away.
I would ask David and Mary Ann to investigate a collaborative venture between CCS and the foundation for the purpose of expanding our grant footprint.
Yeah, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay.
Nicely done.
And we'll talk just a little more. David, I think you got a lot of freedom here, because if they were like, well, I don't want to go to that corner at all, but I want to go to that corner, you got freedom here. And maybe we can sit here and we'll have the elections March 3rd. We'll have a meeting late March or very early April.
Well, I just want to add to that too. I think that we could easily take the recreation program plan that we designed a few years back, and we know that there's still some gaps when it comes to enrichment programs. That's an opportunity to look at enrichment programs, and does it better suit the foundation, or does it better suit us? And if we're working collaboratively, we can figure that out.
And let's also.
That's nice.
And let's also remember, we got Island Village coming online. It may be that there are opportunities to do things down there with charging stations or LED lights, I'm just making stuff up, or something where there's value to the community as a whole.
And there may be something with the builder.
I think we have an open plate here, but it's at least it's a place to start.
Yep.
And if you've got a resource there that's been hired, that's.
You're not
yeah,
duplicating
one heck
the
of a-
efforts
Like
between
I
two
say,
different
let's
entities.
collaborate somehow on that resource,
That's,
and then really, you can report back to the board through emails and junk like that, but we can watch it evolve and see what it means.
so the other message I would hear, and I, again, appreciate Celia's comment, is as residents, or even non-residents, have ideas, float them, and let's see if there's an appropriate home and then traction for moving something forward.
And maybe we could put something on the website and just say, we're seeking, or Friday Flash as well, we're seeking ideas.
Do we want to let David go back to the foundation
Let's talk-
first?
let's talk.
David's gotta go back first. I don't want to
I
get.
wouldn't do
Let's not
anything
lose
until,
his
until,
idea.
Well, yeah, but I
until the
don't,
next election.
but what I want to avoid though is I don't want to get 100 ideas and we have
Right.
no avenue to execute
Let's-
anything.
yeah.
Because then people will say, Crow Up dropped it, CCMC dropped it,
Right.
you know, they
Yeah.
did it again. So
Yeah.
as we build, that's why I,
Yeah, you're right.
build a way to execute and then
Yep.
go with God. I'm happy with
Can I
that.
throw one more out there that just popped into my brain? There may be some invasive species grants out there too for the wild boars and those types of things that we're hearing some complaints about. So that's another opportunity to look at.
Falling iguanas?
I don't think that's
That's
far
only in
north, right?
Yeah,
That's one day a year, 2 days a year.
Is that it? That's all?
All right, can I call the vote on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So we have an agreement on a way to proceed forward, which I think is actually a great answer. I appreciate that, David.
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity. I think it's,
Any other business to bring to before the board?
I think in part of our discussion, I think at least for the next meeting, we need to be able to give proper direction as to what we want to do with sustainability or non-sustainability of the 4th of July. And I hate to beat a dead horse, but I don't want to get stuck with the exact same conversation.
Well,
I just,
and we're going to start, once the election's over, we're going to start getting in your ear a little bit about 25th anniversary, which is 2021. And we spent about $83,000 for the 20th anniversary altogether. And I want you all to close your eyes and remember that day of having Big Bad Voodoo Daddy here and the fireworks after, and
was a
just the
ton of
feel
fun.
and how great that was. So that's, conversation is coming, and we have a wonderful committee, wonderful staff that are very creative in planning, and I'm hearing some really cool ideas coming out of them right now. So that conversation is coming.
Does cool mean expensive?
Well,
always means
good is always,
It always
it's
means
caviar taste. I mean, you
Yeah.
gotta pay for
Yeah.
it, so.
yeah, we're gonna do it. Yes, Sam?
Just the guy that played at the Presbyterian Church Saturday night as the entertainment.
I don't know who that
The
was. but-
Atomic Band.
I heard they
Atomic
were
Band.
very good.
They were amazing.
oh, they were, yes. The,
Jim, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
they were amazing.
We'll have a lot coming. 4th of July is going to make the agenda for the next board. I've heard it
I
loud.
just
Make
want
sure
to
it
make
makes
sure
it to
I
the
don't want to
minutes
deal with
that,
this again. I'm over having, we need to have a plan.
Since Vaughn's gotta go home and get his computer, can I have a motion to
Wait, wait,
adjourn?
wait,
Wait, we need the next meeting.
next meeting.
Do you want to do it for
CCS.
the next board meeting in March, the March board meeting?
Last year, we didn't do a March
We
board
didn't
meeting
do a
because of all the transition, the
Oh,
that's
drive
right.
around, everything else that takes place. So if it's necessary, we certainly
I don't think
can
we,
put
I
it, but
don't think we,
it's a busy month.
it is. Do we want to do it right after following, or before the April board meeting?
Schedule it, yeah.
We haven't scheduled the April board meeting yet. We typically do that at the
Waiting
It's the fourth,
organizational
most
meeting. But
likely
if
the
it's
fourth
the,
Wednesday.
if it's the fourth,
We'll
third
just-
Wednesday of every month, we can,
Yeah, we'll just, on our agenda, just say, just previous, 5 o'clock before, or whatever, previous to our, or just before our board meeting in April, whenever that is.
Right, and it may be March. I mean, if the election ended up with the exact same 4 board members,
We
we
could
may
do
have a
March.
meeting in March,
Yeah.
not worry about a lot of
Yeah,
stuff,
just keep
because we'll
things-
be,
And just keep going.
just hit the ball rolling. And
Yeah.
if there's 4 new board members, you're gonna need a transition month.
Yeah.
And I won't worry
That's
about
a
it.
good point.
Yeah. No, but I will.
Yes, the three of us will.
Can I have a motion
Three of
to
you guys
adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Go, Vaughn.